Hello, welcome to this short video where we're going to show you how to make a Christmas wreath. This is from all of us at Ardington School of Crafts. We hope you enjoy it. Just looking at the equipment that you'll need today, I've got some sphagnum moss, which is hanging basket type moss. You can also buy this in bulk from the florists. It's easier to buy from a garden centre in a small bag like that. I've got a range of different wreath wire sizes. I'm going to do the large 16-inch today, but you can also do 14 or 12 or 10, depending on the size that you want to go for. Some nice ribbons for the end. The two main things you'll need for wiring up all the plants is, this is a florist wire, and we use this to bind the moss on. And then you'll need these stub wires, which we will use to make individual sprigs to attach to the wreath. Two different types of wire. I'm also going to experiment with this sisal liner that is used for hanging baskets instead of the moss. I'm just thinking about sustainability, so I'm going to trial this as well today. Just to make the moss go a bit further, I'm going to blend it with a little bit of pulled up grass. There's moss at the bottom of this as well. So, and this will make it easier to bind onto the hoop as well. So to start off, use your wire and make a secure fastening around one of the joints on the wreath ring. Now I'm right-handed, so I'll use my wire in my right hand. You unroll a little bit. My secateurs are ready for later. You put a good handful of this either side, and you use your wire to bind it quite tightly onto the wreath ring. So I've gone round that handful about 3 times. A little bit more, front and back. You're aiming to cover the ring completely so that the scratchy wire doesn't damage your front door, and it allows moisture to the fresh foliage that we're going to add to the ring. So we carry on binding all of this moss and grass onto the wire. So I'm coming up to the last handful, making sure it's nice and even. I need a little bit more padding here. Just give it a shake. Anything big that's going to fall out will fall out at this point. Take a look on the back, make sure it's fairly even. And what I will do now is just go all the way around again with the wire, just giving it one final bind. If there's any thin patches, it's a good idea to pack it in at this point. You do need it to be quite tight, not too loose and spongy, because it just won't hold any of the foliage that we put on later. So I'm binding all the way around again with the wire, and I can use the wire towards the end to make my loop for hanging. You can also hang it with a ribbon. Sometimes it's quite good to make a loop with the wire. Depends on what your door will take. We use a nail in the very top of the door so that you can hook the ribbon over the top of the door and onto the nail and close the door, and the ribbon fits neatly. But actually, if you've got opportunity to wire this to a door knocker, then a wire loop is the best. So I think I'm at the end there. So what I'm going to do to make my loop, let's clear the way a little bit there so you can see properly. I'm going to make a physical loop with my hand around the wreath and then around the wire. It's a bit like a bag tie. And I'm going to cut my wire off. Secateurs are quite good for wire, but it will blunt them, so. And then I'm just tucking away that sharp wire end into the moss so there's no scratchy bits left. And there we have the first stage of our moss ring. Nice little bit of grass sticking out there, but that's fine. Ready to get our foliage in place. The experimental sisal hanging basket liner, I'm going to try a small wreath on that. I'm going to cut it into strips so that we can wrap the strips around. So I've got a sharp knife here. You could use scissors, but it's quite tough. I'm just teasing that apart so it's got a bit of a natural edge. And then the plan with this will be to wrap it around the whole wreath in these thin strips. We can secure it with wire at the end, and I think that will make quite a nice wreath. I'm adding the last piece of this sisal to the wreath wire now. It's given a nice effect and actually has stayed in place without the wire. But just to be doubly sure, what you really don't want to do is your wreath to fall apart when you hang it. So I'm attaching the wire to this, and I will wire all the way around it just like I did with the moss.
How long's the hoop?
I've left about 6 inches on there. It's worth planning how long and what type of hoop function you want based on your own door. So I'd recommend you take a look at how you're going to fix it to your door before you start. There we go. There's some lovely eucalyptus prunings here. They always make a beautiful wreath because of that lovely blue silver colour. So I'll be taking a lot of this.
It's a nice basket. Where did you buy that?
My husband Simon made this in an Ardington workshop. It's a lovely trug. Isn't it delightful? I'm just going to take a couple of snippets off this lovely juniper. Beautiful blue silver colour, works well with the eucalyptus. This is yew. This is always quite nice. We can take a couple of pieces off this. We'd need quite a few sprigs of this, but it's growing strongly here, so I can spare some of this. Rosemary, again, another beautiful addition to a Christmas wreath. Smells delicious. Some beautiful shaped sage sprigs. Nice contrast with this osmanthus, and the sprigs are a perfect shape for making into wreaths. I'm going to take some of these nice big ivy leaves as well with a good stem. I think they will work quite nicely in some of these sprigs. This is a beautiful ivy. I think it's called Sulphur Heart. And I've been planting these especially for Christmas arrangements and Christmas wreaths. There's some lovely berries on this Cotoneaster. I don't want to take too many away from the birds, but I'll just take a couple of sprigs of these. Tree ivy. It only starts to get berries when it's grown to its full maturity at tree size, but they make for wonderful Christmas wreath additions. This is another one I've planted specially for Christmas. Christmas wreaths and arrangements are beautiful. Holly Argentea marginata, so a silver-leaved holly. Some Eleagnus, another foliage plant, perfect for flower arrangers.
What other stuff could go in that people might have?
Any of the conifer trees, anything that's evergreen and hardy, rubbery, leathery leaves. I will take some of this viburnum tinus as well. It's not quite in flower yet, but it's heavily in bud. Beautiful fragrant white flowers. They may well come out whilst they're sitting in the wreath, and there's plenty of this, so I'll take some of these. When you've raided the garden and you're back at your bench, the next thing to do is to start to clip these bigger pieces into small sprigs, more or less the same size. So you can see I've already cut some of these about the right size. It's about probably as long as my hand. So making up your sprigs for your wreath, what we're aiming to do is make lots of mini bouquets that we can then add to the wreath. Make sure you've got at least an inch of stem clear here at this end, because this is where we will be tying the wire. So just start to collect from your selection a nice combination of maybe 3 different things in your hand. That's a lovely one. And then with all those stems tightly together, this is where we need our sprig wires. You can get these from Hobbycraft or a florist's. What I do is I bend them in half with my thumb, like that. So there's a lot of manipulation with your dominant hand. Made a nice loop in that stem. I put it just behind the stems on here, and whilst holding one side of the wire in place, I wrap the other wire end tightly round those to make a nice tight little bunch. So when you've done probably about 20 of these, we'll be ready to make up the wreath. So I'm going to carry on and finish these now. I think I've got just over 20 sprigs here. Should be enough for the big wreath. So when they're all ready, lay them out, take a little look at them, make sure they're all secure, and then you can start assembling your wreath. And if you've done them like I have in lots of different foliages, then just going around the wreath will give you a nice even spread. I've only got 3 lots of berries, so I'm going to make sure they are evenly placed around the wreath. And these very bright leaves, I've only got 5 of those, so again I'm going to make sure they're spread out. But the rest of it is predominantly eucalyptus based. That's my unifying foliage, and they will therefore create the main background of the wreath. When you're ready to start assembling the wreath, the way I do it is I just start to lay a few things on to start with. I tend to work clockwise around the wreath, and I will lay them at slight angles like this, so I'm making sure that I cover the outside as well. There's no need to lay them all the way around, but just to give yourself an idea, have you got enough? Because it's not great starting again when you're halfway round. Okay, we're ready to start our first sprig. So using the wire here as your anchor point, we're going to push that in through the moss It's come out the other side. I then lay my sprig against the moss and I manipulate this one. I'm creating a loop and I'm tucking that wire into the back. When you've pressed that in securely, that will hold each piece in place. So I'll then just start to go around the wreath, inserting these as I go, leaving just enough space in between them to be able to fix the mechanics, but making sure that we cover the surface area. You can adjust them a little bit because they're on wire, so I'm probably leaving 2-3 inches in between each sprig here.
Do you tend to start at the top where the loop is?
I do. I tend to start clockwise at 12 o'clock and go around the wreath like this. Bend the wire over at the back, tuck it in, just press it in nice and securely, and you can see your wreath starting to take shape, and it will be very full looking doing it like this. I think I'm ready for my first accent colour. So as I said, I've got 5 of these bright gold coloured leaves, so I'm going to put that one in, just work out where it needs to lie, and then that determines where you place your wire. Again, tucking that back wire in, bending it over, tucking it in. And you start to work around the wreath in this way. So I'm just over halfway round now. Let's just hold that up.
It's looking really full.
Give it a little shake. It's still holding up quite well and is looking pretty even. And I think I've got enough sprigs to go round. I do tend to make a wreath very, very full. Well, I'm nearly coming to the end now. I just have to be a little bit careful towards the top, that we balance it nicely. And I might leave room for a bow as well. Yeah, that nice big ivy leaf sticking out the top there. So I think I'm finished. I've got 1 or 2 sprigs left, so this is the time to hold it up and check for balance. What do you think? Is there any gaps?
See any gaps?
Okay. I've got 1 more sprig left. So I am just gonna see if I can tuck it in under that leaf there. Seems a shame to waste it. The smell of this is divine with all the rosemary and sage and eucalyptus. Very beautiful.
I'm going to hold it up again.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
It's a good idea at this time to stand back and take a look. Yeah, that does feel quite nicely balanced. Got 3 sets of berries, they're even. Some of those big ivy leaves are a little bit prominent, but nevertheless that's not too bad. So now I'm going to think about a bow, and there are lots of different options for bows. You can buy this lovely wired ribbon from the florist shop, so the edges of this are wired, so you can shape it into beautiful bows. That does look quite nice with this one. The red would pick up the red berries in there, rather lovely. I am a bit of a green fan, so green and gold would be nice. And this other option is one of these pull-up bows. If you buy these from the florist shop, or I buy them in bulk from florist suppliers, one end is fixed, the other end is open with a pull tie, and this is magic. You just pull. And this beautiful bow appears with two little tails, so you can attach that anywhere you like onto your wreath. So the experiment with the sisal will work. It's a little bit difficult to push the wires in and through that. It just about works. But I think a simpler approach could be that you just have your wire on the reel and you wire them in one at a time. So if I had a lot more sprigs now, I'd just go around wiring them in the same way. So a useful substitute, but I think I prefer the moss. I'm sure many of you know this, but to curl this wire, you pull it along the blades of your scissors, and you can either leave it like that with long tassels, or you can cut them a bit shorter. That's more like it. Happy Christmas from all of us at Ardington School of Crafts. Thank you so much for all your support.